Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on Imagine if Naruto had secret harem with Aelita, so do 4 blue hearts. Comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy version, link in description. Hey, Einstein, what's up? Jeremy Belpoy turned around to see the yellow and purple-haired friend of his, Aude Della Rabbia, enter his room. Not much, he replied. There's something up with the supercomputer. An alert was triggered this morning and now it's showing some sort of countdown. I have no idea to what though. Xana attack? Asked Ulrich Stern, who walked in with Yumi Ishiyama and Aelita. The girl they removed from the virtual world of Lyoko. No, the super scan hasn't detected any activated towers. I know, because I've had it running since I got the alert this morning. Hey, this is new, said the blonde genius. What is, Jeremy? Asked Aelita. It's a new file in Franz Hopper's diary. It's encoded pretty well too. It looks like it needs some sort of password or something, he replied. Do you think it has something to do with the countdown? Asked Yumi. Possibly. It's labeled, Project Maelstrom. Wonder what that could be. Well, whatever it is, we'll probably find out when the countdown's up, right? Asked Ulrich. Maybe. Let's head to the factory after class. The timer is set to go off at 5 this afternoon, said Jeremy, shutting his laptop. Yeah, who knows? It might be something really cool, said Aude. Before the group left the room to head to their classes. Aelita seemed to be walking funny though. Something Yumi was quick to point out. I don't know, I think I may be coming down with something. My body aches all over lately, said Aelita. Maybe you should go to the infirmary, suggested Ulrich. No, I'm fine. Let's just head to class, she replied. At the old abandoned factory. Deep below it actually, nothing but a few mice moved. They scurried along, looking for food. One mouse crawled across a strange pod with a glowing blue light shining from one side. And a red light coming from the other. It was suddenly blown back by a pulse of energy that escaped the pod, mostly traveling down the many cords and wires connected to it. This was the power source. Not for the supercomputer, no. This pod, or more accurately, the blonde teenager slumbering inside it, powered different functions of the supercomputer. Special ones that no ordinary power source could handle. Flashing across the POD's screen was a countdown, directly in sync with the one on Jeremy's computer. And it was nearing its end. If anyone were in that room, they would have seen the boy inside twitch. So, any idea of what's causing the countdown? Asked Ulrich, Jeremy hard at work trying to hack the video diary of Franz Hopper. He was partially successful. Suddenly, a video file began playing. It looked to be shot from the angle of a security camera. It showed the very room the group was currently in, with a younger-looking Franz Hopper than they had seen before, working diligently. Then, something caught the Lyoko gang's collective eyes. A purple spark, then a red one, then a blue one. They seemed to appear out of thin air. As Franz got up to take a look, it appeared as though he were blown away by a gale force wind. A ball of light had appeared from nowhere, 2 silhouettes inside the glowing orb. The ball suddenly faded, revealing a blonde-haired boy slightly older than Yumi falling to the floor. Blood leaking over the floor not 10 feet from where they were watching the video. The other boy, who seemed to be about the same age as the other, was absolutely hid. EOUS looking, yet they couldn't stop looking at him. He had gray skin, long white hair, a black 4-pointed star over the bridge of his nose, and red eyes. He had huge wings growing from his back, and his clawed hands seemed to be sparking with black lightning. He said something, and only Yumi seemed to comprehend what was being said. They're speaking Japanese, she said. I know, replied Jeremy, before running a translator program. The boy turned to Franz Hopper and this time they could all understand him. You, where am I? He said. You're in France, where are you supposed to be? Asked Franz, apparently in perfect Japanese. As he appeared to understand what the boy said, and the boy seemed to understand him. You're just as useless as he is. Can you get me back to the elemental nations or not? Said the boy in an icy tone. Lightning once more flowing from his hand. Yes. If you go down that elevator to a room with 3 vertical columns, I can guide you from there, replied Franz. apparently programming the elevator to head to the scanner room. It cut to some more footage of the boy entering one of the scanners. A feat in itself considering his massive wings. "Now, just step in and I'll send you home," said Franz over the intercom. "You had better," the boy replied darkly before the scanner closed and the process began. As soon as he activated the scanner process, Franz went to help the blonde boy. Turning him over, he realized that as bloody as the boy was, there wasn't a scratch on him. He seemed to be in a comatose state however. The group listened and heard Hopper say, "I don't know who that boy was or what he did to you my friend, but I don't think he'll be doing it to anyone else after that one-way ticket into the digital sea." The Lyoko gang's eyes widened at that. Hopper had dropped the kid into the digital sea. They didn't know much about it, but they knew it was bad news. A trip there meant permanent virtualization. Their video cut off suddenly, as a new screen popped up, showing a glowing pod with the same countdown. Jeremy counted down the seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The pod suddenly opened, releasing a lot of smoke. "Guys, that thing is 4 levels down. I think we should go check it out," said Jeremy. "No way Einstein. I don't want to know what's in that thing," said Odd. "Too bad," said Ulrich, and Yumi simultaneously, grabbing Odd's arms and dragging Odd into the elevator with the rest of them. "Naruto, Naruto, wake up my love." Naruto opened his eyes to find himself sitting outside of Kyuubi's cage. Or what used to be her cage. To get enough power to stabilize 2 humans traveling through the void between worlds took a true demon's power. And so, she convinced Naruto to break the seal. Normally that would kill him, however. She didn't leave because the seal was gone. She stayed. And she used her power to do something no other clan boss, demon, or kitsune had ever done. She transferred all of her power into the boy which, over time, had transformed his body. He looked nearly the same, but he now sported slitted pupils in his eyes, elongated fox ears on top of his head, and 9 flowing tails that matched hers protruded from his tailbone. His hands were shaped into claws, and his whisker marks became darker and more defined. "What's going on?" he asked, before feeling the embrace of Kyuubi's human form. She took the form of a beautiful redhead, with the same animalistic features that he now sported. She also had slitted pupils, but her eyes were red in contrast to his blue ones. She also had magnificent assets. She seemed to be the same age as him, though she was nearly 5,000 years old. "Naruto," Kyuubi said, before burying her face in his chest. "You've been asleep for a long time my love." "What do you mean? What happened in the fight?" he asked, before he kissed her deeply. "Naruto, that was years ago outside. You've been in a coma. I couldn't wake you up. You finally managed to do it on your own. I've been waiting for ages for you to come to." "What?" said Naruto. "I'm afraid so love. I've been waiting for you to wake for a long time. I'm not sure what's been happening outside. All I know is that you're alive. And I'm so happy that you're alive," she said, once more burying her face in his chest. "While I really don't want to leave, I've got to go outside and see the situation," said Naruto, kissing her on the forehead. "I'll be back shortly love." With that, he disappeared from within his mindscape. He took a moment to take a step from the pod he was in. The room seemed to be very high-tech. Suddenly, he heard a hissing sound and looked over to see a door sliding open. Quickly, he jumped up and stuck to the ceiling, out of sight of anyone coming in. What he didn't expect was to see 5 teens slightly younger than himself enter the room, each one oddly dressed and speaking a strange language. Naruto suddenly felt a tingle in the base of his skull as information was flooded to it, courtesy of his lover. Dropping down behind them, the group didn't even notice him. He seemed to examine the pod with them. Once they turned around however, they all screamed in fright and backed up. "It's all right. I don't mean to harm anyone. I just need some information. But first, who here do you think has the best grasp of the language you're speaking?" Apparently, only the dark-haired girl understood him. That would be Jeremy. "But why do you want?" She was cut off when Naruto seemingly disappeared and reappeared, holding Jeremy up by his shirt. The gang was too shocked to move. Suddenly, the boy's eyes glowed red for a moment before Jeremy's did the same. As quickly as it began, it ended, and Jeremy was put back down. They watched the older boy's eyes roll into the back of his head and his eyelids twitch. Suddenly, he spoke. "Is this any better?" he asked, much to the shock of the Lyoko gang. I'll take that as a yes, said Naruto, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Just hold on for a moment, said Naruto. He suddenly hunched over and was overtaken by a bright red light. The others in the room were forced to look away. When they looked back, they saw the blonde's ears had become animal-like and relocated to the top of his head. 9 tails extended from his tailbone, the whiskers on his face became more defined, and his hands had become claws. That's better, he sighed, relaxing a bit. What are you? Asked Aelita. Allow me to introduce myself, said Naruto. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, former shinobi of the Hidden Leaf, new Kyuubi no Kitsune, lord of the Summon World and king of the Fox clans. Whoa, let me get this straight. You're saying you're the Kyuubi? The 9-tailed fox from Japanese folklore? Asked Yumi. I don't know, maybe. You might be thinking of Q. The Kyuubi before me. I'm actually fairly new to this. The kids in front of him looked at him like he was crazy. Here, maybe this will help. Jeremy, could you come here again please? He said. Jeremy cautiously got up to Naruto, and the two once again made eye contact. As they did, Naruto's tail sprang to life and touched each of the gang on the forehead. They each felt an odd pulling sensation and found themselves standing in what looked like a cross between a sewer and a dungeon passageway. Where are we? Asked Aelita. You're in my mind, rang the voice of the blonde boy. Before the wall next to them morphed into another passageway, a light at the end of the tunnel. The group looked at each other before heading down the passage. When they reached the end, they found themselves in a giant room. A giant cage totally destroyed on one end. Standing over by the destroyed cage was the blonde from before, along with a redhead who bore similar features as he did. They were standing waiting for them. The blonde with his arm around the redhead. It's not much, but it's home, said the redhead. You can call me Q. I'm Aelita, this is Jeremy, that's Yumi, and that's Odd and Ulrich, said Aelita. She seemed confused about something. I don't know what it is, but you seem really familiar, she said. Q eyed her carefully. Well, she said, I can assure you we've never met before. Why not? Asked Yumi. Naruto has been in a coma since arriving in your world. And I've been in here waiting for him to wake up, replied Q simply. Anyway, said Naruto, let's get down to business, shall we? Time skip. So let me get this straight. You're an all-powerful fox spirit that used to be human. You got in a fight with some traitor to your village, who turned into that freaky thing from the video. And your attacks ripped a hole between your world and ours? Questioned Ulrich. Yep, that about sums it up, replied Naruto. So, how did you two get together? It sounds to me like she ruined your life, said Odd. Q blushed furiously. Well, see, the thing is, we hated each other the first time we met, said Naruto, but you find that when you just talk for a while, you can get past a lot of things. The first time we met was when my teacher pushed me off a cliff. Your teacher pushed you off a cliff? Asked Odd. Remind me never to complain about Ms. Hertz being tough on us ever again. The others all nodded in agreement. Suddenly, the room shifted and they once more found themselves in the lab. What was odd was that this time, Q was with them. Well, said Naruto. I've been asleep for over 2 decades I'd wager, so I have just one thing to say, I really need something to eat. Okami, here we go, said Q, face palming. What is it? Asked Jeremy. When this mate of mine is only feeling mildly hungry, he can put away nearly 10 bowls of ramen. I can only imagine what he might eat when he's starving, she replied, causing Naruto to face plant. Shut up. I need the energy that the food provides, said Naruto, getting a look from Q. You have the energy to destroy the world 3 times over and you're telling me you need more. Naruto once more face planted at this. Okay, I enjoy food a little too much. At least it's not like I'm an Akamichi. Though that human boulder technique is pretty awesome, said Naruto. He took a look at the others and saw they were looking at him like he was insane. You eat that much and you look like this, said Odd. Yeah, whatever I eat tends to burn off rather quickly, replied Naruto as the group entered the elevator. So what are you going to do now? If you plan on blending into society, we can always create fake documents for you, said Aelita. Maybe later, said Naruto. Right now, it's getting late. And I wanna see what this Hopper guy was using me for. Can you even operate a computer? Asked Jeremy. Well, I'll admit I'm not tech savvy, but I'm kinda borrowing your genius. I looked in your mind, remember? I know how to operate the supercomputer as much as you do now. We'll be fine, said Naruto, getting off the elevator with Q. Well, okay. We'll probably see you two tomorrow, said Jeremy. Before the elevator once more closed, leaving Naruto and Q alone in the lab. Now, said Naruto, sitting down in the chair, let's see just what secrets you hold. He tried to access the file that was locked, and was once more asked for the password. 6 slots, but what to put? After an hour of trying, Naruto got up to pace. What the hell could be the password? Well, said Q, you are supposed to be Project Maelstrom, so it only makes sense that you should be able to get the password to the file. Maelstrom is your name after all. Naruto contemplated her words for a moment, before his eyes suddenly widened in realization. He ran over and kissed her deeply. Q, he said, you're a genius. Well, that's great, replied Q. Now would you mind telling me why I'm a genius? Not that I mind being called one. Nor would I mind another kiss. Naruto leaned in and kissed her again, before heading back and sitting before the computer. There's no way the name of this thing matching the meaning of my name is coincidence. Let's see, Project Maelstrom, 6 digits, let's see, N-A-R-U-T-O. As soon as he entered the new password, the file opened, showing more information than Naruto could possibly have asked for. One file caught his eye, labeled, Watch Me. Q came over as Naruto opened the file and Franz Hopper appeared. Hello Naruto, the recorded man said, in perfect Japanese. If you're watching this, then you've woken up. There are many things I have to tell you. First things first, the boy you traveled here with has been disposed of and is no longer a danger. Naruto already knew this, having seen Jeremy's memory of the video. As you were asleep, I apologize, but I used your abundant energy to power certain things around my laboratory. You put off more energy than any generator. Near the levels of a nuclear reaction. I've just taken it and converted it to electricity. Among the functions you power are my time reversion program, allowing for a short rewind of time. And you also operate the scanners to send real-world people and items to Lyoko and back again. By the time you awake, these functions will have stored enough power to operate without you. Now, on to some more pressing matters, ones that you need to hear. Suddenly, a picture of Aelita appeared on the screen, though she was only a very small girl in the picture. This is my daughter Aelita. Well, legally she is my daughter. Naruto's eyes narrowed at this. What did Aelita have to do with him? Unfortunately, an accident in my youth has left me unable to have children. And my wife and I so wanted a child. And that's where you come in. For reasons I do not yet understand, your DNA is, for lack of a better term, perfect. So, I took a sample of your sperm, and my wife and I used them to produce a child. Simply put, I may be Aelita's father legally, you are her father biologically. Naruto's eyes widened at this. Q seemed just as shocked. But for completely different reasons. Any more information you may require is stored in this file. I had hoped that in the event you ever woke up, we could talk in person. But the very fact that you are watching this video means I am in fact no longer able to speak to you. My only hope is that your daughter is. The video cut out there. Naruto was silent. This man had used him to power his toys, and give him a daughter. He had a daughter that knew nothing about him. This is bad, very very bad, said Q. Well, it's surprising, but I wouldn't call it bad, replied Naruto, not looking at her. No, not that, she said. Quote, Aelita is the cross of a human and a kitsune. Eventually, the kitsune in her DNA will override everything else. Naruto still didn't seem to understand. In other words, that nice girl, at any minute, could sprout ears and a tail. Naruto's eyes widened at that. We need to keep watch on her. If something happens we'll need to get her away fast and teach her how to shape-shift, finished Q, heading for the elevator. I'll come with, said Naruto, getting up. No, you stay and look through those files. They may come in handy later, said Q as the elevator door closed, leaving Naruto with his thoughts. She was right. Naruto only knew what Q taught him. She really was the master. Naruto just stared off into space, remembering when he and Q actually met. Not when he had demanded her Yuki to save him, no. He had attempted meditating, an exercise Jiraiya had taught him. He found himself pulled into his mindscape, and there she was, in all her glory. Flashback. "All right Fox, what do you want?" shouted an irate Naruto. "Insolent child. I am the queen of the Fox clans, ruler of demons and summons alike. I will not be spoken to in such a manner." "Yeah, well queen." "Yes, queen, you idiot. You don't think a female can be as powerful as I am." The Kyuubi's voice became more human-like and the horrible face disappeared, before a beautiful girl walked up to the cage bars. When he saw her, Naruto could only think of one word to describe her. Angel. Kyuubi blushed profusely. She had been called a lot of things while in human form, but never an angel. Most of the time, even though her human form was that of a teenager, she was called more provocative things. She quickly shook the thoughts from her head, remembering where she was and who was talking to her. "Flattered though I am a queen. And will be spoken to as such," she said. "If those bars weren't there, would you attack me?" Kyuubi nearly tripped at that question. "No, why?" she asked, now immensely curious of her jailer. "I have your word." Quote, "Yes, you have my word of honor that I would not attack you if the bars were absent," she replied. Suddenly, the bars began to fade away, a pair of manacles appearing on her wrist. The kanji for seal on them. "I don't know how well I can sustain this when I'm not in here, but a lady shouldn't have to deal with these conditions," said Naruto as the water on. The floor pooled into a lake and the entirety of the mindscape became an outdoor paradise, with a nice house next to the lake. "Shall we go inside and talk?" Kyuubi once more blushed. She was beginning to like this boy. The mere fact that he knew she was a she made him give her this, for as long as he was there. The boy had a respect for women at least. She slowly nodded, before she and Naruto went inside to discuss their situation. Flashback end. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts by an alert coming up. He knew from the information he stripped from Jeremy's mind that this meant Xana had activated a tower. So, he did the only thing he could do. He contacted the others. They all arrived as a group, headed by Jeremy, Q bringing up the rear. They were still questioning why she had been spying on them. From what he gathered, she hadn't told them what they learned from the video. "Get down to the scanners," said Jeremy, taking control from Naruto. Ulrich, Yumi, Odd, and Aelita nodded and went in, leaving Naruto, Q, and Jeremy in the lab. "Did you unlock the file?" asked Jeremy, trying to start a conversation. "Yeah, but you are not gonna believe what was in it," replied Naruto. Jeremy just looked at him funny. Before virtualizing Odd, Yumi, and Aelita onto Lyoko, Ulrich followed suit shortly afterward. The four arrived in the desert sector. "Guys, the activated tower is directly ahead of you. You had better go fast, company's coming," rang the voice of Jeremy. "You got it Einstein, could you bring up the vehicles?" said Odd, before the overboard virtualized in front of him. The overbike then appeared before Ulrich and the overwing next to Yumi. "Thanks Jeremy," said Ulrich, before taking off. Aelita grabbed a hold of Odd and they sped off, and Yumi brought up the rear. "Just watch out for Xana's monsters," replied Jeremy. "Too late," said Naruto, who was looking at the screen over Jeremy's shoulder. Sure enough, the screen showed several tarantulas heading their way. A group of hornets was already coming up on the gang's rear. On Lyoko, the group was quite aware of the monsters, both in front of them, and behind them. It wasn't long before Yumi's overwing was destroyed, causing her to go crashing to the ground. It was then that the unusual happened. All the monsters stopped their pursuit and instead all targeted Yumi. She pulled her fans out to block the oncoming hail of fire. She didn't last long under the onslaught however, soon taking a hit to the leg, before taking a direct hit to the chest, devirtualizing her. "Guys," said Jeremy, "it looks like Xana has changed tactics. He's trying to take you out one at a time." "Really Einstein?" "Hadn't noticed," replied Odd, as he swerved to dodge fire from the tarantulas. Ulrich quickly rushed the tarantulas, jumping off the overbike, causing it to crash into two tarantulas, knocking them off the edge of the cliff. As he came down, he unsheathed his swords, taking out another of the tarantulas, but was quickly overwhelmed by the rest. Along with the hornets. He was soon devirtualized like Yumi. Odd, you and Aelita are all alone out there, be careful, said Jeremy. Read you loud and clear Einstein, said Odd. Not 2 seconds later, the overboard was hit and devirtualized, causing both Odd and Aelita to fall to the ground below. As soon as Odd was hit, he too came under the attacks of Xana's monsters. What's happening on Lyoko? Asked Yumi, as she exited the elevator, carrying an unconscious Ulrich on her shoulder. Odd and Aelita are the only ones left, and Odd isn't doing too good. He just lost another 15 life points. He's only got 10 left, replied Jeremy, almost frantic. Send me. The group looked to see Naruto already heading for the elevator. Is that such a good idea? Asked Yumi. Right now it's our only option. Get down to the scanners and I'll start the virtualization process, replied Jeremy, making the necessary preparations. On Lyoko, Odd was pinned down, hiding behind a rock outcropping. It wouldn't hold for long however. And he was wasting all of his laser arrows on the hornets that flew over the rock to attack him. Aelita was having problems of her own, as he was completely surrounded by tarantulas. A moment later, they parted to allow the Scyphozoa to pass through. She attempted to back away, but was stopped by the barricade of tarantulas. She was trapped. The Scyphozoa used its tentacles to hoist Aelita into the air and began the process of taking her memory. Hurry up Naruto, said Jeremy, silently praying that he would get to Aelita in time. Back on Lyoko, a bolt of blue fire shot from the sky, hitting the Scyphozoa, causing it to release Aelita. As the girl came to, she looked into the sky. Flying in the sky, with incredible angelic wings, at least with a 20-foot wingspan, was Naruto. He wore a blood-red wrap around his bottom half, and no shirt, revealing many tattoos that covered his entire right side. He also kept his 9 tails and fox ears. It was an awe-inspiring sight. He held out his hand, and a glowing light formed, taking the shape of a bow of some kind. He acted as if he was pulling back, and an arrow of blue flames formed, before he released, hitting the Scyphozoa dead on the eye. It shrieked before flying away, not being destroyed. Aelita, go. I'll cover you, shouted Naruto, who landed and his wings disappeared. The light bow in his hand suddenly turned into a sword hilt, blue flames flowing up, forming a very ornate sword. The pink-haired girl merely nodded, before running for the activated tower, about 100 yards away. As the creatures began to attack Naruto, he nearly took half down with a slash in the air, sending a wave of light flying at the monsters. He was almost attacked from behind, but the hornet was destroyed by a laser arrow from Odd. Naruto turned toward the boy as he smiled and gave a thumbs up. It didn't last however, as the smiling blonde and purple-haired boy was hit by a remaining hornet, devirtualizing him. Naruto proceeded to take out every monster around him. Jeremy found it amazing. Naruto would regenerate life points as fast as he could lose them. He finally relaxed once Aelita safely got to the tower. As the tower deactivated, Jeremy rematerialized Naruto and Aelita. The best part was that since Xana hadn't actually launched an attack on the real world, they didn't have to use a return trip. As Naruto and Aelita came out of the elevator, Naruto was actually applauded by Odd, and the rest of the group gave him high fives. Man, you were awesome. Those arrows, the sword, and those huge wings, exclaimed Odd. Yeah, you really saved me back there Naruto, thank you, said Aelita. Well, what was I gonna do? After all, you are my only link to this world apparently, he replied. Getting confused looks from all present except Q. What do you mean? Asked Ulrich. Bring up the video file I unlocked called Watch Me, and you'll find out, Naruto replied, sitting down against the wall. Jeremy did so and the whole group saw what Naruto and Q had seen earlier. Jeremy was astounded at the energy levels that Naruto put off, but even that feeling was DWA. RFED when Hopper brought up the subject of Aelita. So, you are, said Aelita. Your father apparently finished Naruto for her. This is a lot to process, said Aelita, sliding down the wall, ending up sitting next to Naruto. You're telling me, replied Naruto. I didn't think I would have kids under normal circumstances. That actually brings up the subject of my spying on you tonight Aelita, said Q, gaining everyone's attention. Have you been feeling alright lately? She asked. Actually, I've been really sore. I don't know what's wrong with me, the pink-haired girl replied. I do. He's a kitsune, meaning you're part kitsune. That part of your DNA is taking precedence over the other. It could be any minute now, it could be weeks. It could be fast, or incredibly slow. The fact of the matter is that eventually, you're gonna look like your father and I, said Q, indicating her animalistic features. You mean she's going to have tails, ears, whiskers and claws? Asked Odd. That about sums it up. Yes, replied Naruto. But how am I going to go to school like that? Asked Aelita. I can't show myself like that, no offense to either of you. Don't worry about that. If it happens at school, we can get you out fast and make everybody forget what they saw. As for looking like this all the time, that's not an issue, said Naruto, suddenly morphing into Jeremy. Kitsune or Natura? L shapeshifters, he said in Jeremy's voice, before shifting into Yumi's form. You're a kitsune, and as a kitsune, you also have the incredibly handy ability to shapeshift, he continued, his voice becoming that of Yumi. Okay. That's pretty cool, said Ulrich, Odd nodding in agreement. Hey, so if you're her dad, does she have to treat you like it? Asked Odd. And what does that make her? He finished, indicating Q. In order. Said Naruto, she can if she likes, but I would prefer if she didn't. And I believe that in the current position we're in, that makes Q Aelita's stepmother. Why? Would you prefer me not to act like I'm your daughter? As far as I'm concerned you're the only family I've got, said Aelita, confused. Ah, that's the problem. Kid, look, we're related by blood. But that makes us relatives, not family. Trust me when I say, these four are probably closer family than I am where you're concerned, said Naruto, his face darkening. Take it from a guy who never had relatives. And for the first 7 years of his life had no real family to speak of, he finished before entering the elevator and leaving the Lyoko gang and Q to their individual thoughts. It was Ulrich who eventually broke the silence. Okay. Just what was that all about? Both of Naruto's parents died the night of my attack on his village, said Q. He had no relatives to take him in and was sent to an orphanage. He lived there for 5 years, being abused and neglected by the staff. When he turned 5, he was kicked out of the orphanage and lived on the street for 2 years, before the village leader finally got some sense and gave Naruto an apartment of his own. Even the good people there discussed me. That traitor that Franz Hopper dropped in the digital sea was once Naruto's best friend. He betrayed their village and attempted to kill Naruto. Now, I'm all he's got, she finished, a slight quiver in her voice. Not that isn't a horrible and touching story, but there's something I can't figure out. Said Jeremy, gaining the attention of those present. What's that, Jeremy? Asked Aelita. Xana had you surrounded for quite a while before the Scyphozoa was sent in, and he didn't make an attack on the real world. Notice that the Scyphozoan only went for you the second Naruto was virtualized. If you ask me, it seems like he was waiting for Naruto, but I can't figure out why, replied the blonde genius. Are you sure you're not just looking for something that isn't there? Asked Yumi. Yeah, Einstein, what would Xana possibly want with Naruto? Maybe the squid was just slow to get there, added Odd. I don't think so. I'd be willing to bet that Xana was aware of Naruto's awakening and wanted to test his ability. I don't know how, but I think Naruto and Xana might have other connections besides Aelita and Franz Hopper, said Jeremy. Naruto sat on the roof of the factory, thinking about what he had said. For a moment, he contemplated the idea that he may have been too harsh. But realized he had only spoken the truth. He wasn't there for the girl. Not once in her life was he ever there. He was in a coma, and she had no idea that he even existed. He didn't deserve the title of father. Hi. Naruto turned around to see Aelita come from the roof access door. How did you know where I was? Asked Naruto, genuinely confused as the pink-haired girl sat down next to him. Something in my gut told me where you were. I think I can sense you, she replied. Look, said Naruto, I'm sorry for, back there. Not for what I said, it was the truth. I'm sorry for how I said it. No, said Aelita, you were right. Blood doesn't make us family. But then we just have to find the thing that does. From what I've gathered from you and Q, you don't have anybody. I can be a daughter to you. Just like I know that you can be a father to me. It's gonna take some work, said Naruto. Then we just need to work on it together, replied Aelita before giving Naruto a smile. It's a deal, said Naruto before they shook hands. As Aelita took Naruto's hand, she felt a pulling sensation, a rush of wind, and they were suddenly standing on the bridge in front of the factory. So cool. Hey both turned to see the rest of the group watching them, odd looking, like his eyes were going to bug out of his head at Naruto and Aelita seemingly teleporting. Naruto lost it then and there, nearly falling to the floor laughing. So, you're Aelita's parents. I must say it's an honor to meet you both, said Principal Delmas, shaking Naruto's hand. Both he and Kyuubi had changed their forms sly to better suit the notion that they were indeed Aelita's parents. Their animal features were gone aside from Naruto's trademark whiskers. If he didn't have them, he would have thought he was the pitting image of the fourth Hokage himself. Q nearly turned into an adult version of herself, lengthening her hair slightly so that it fell down to the small of her back. However, the change in its LF was astounding to the Lyoko gang when they saw it. It's an honor to meet you as well, Mr. Delmas. As you know, we're here to see you about our daughter Aelita, said Naruto. Ah, yes, Aelita is one of our brightest students. You should be very proud of your girl, replied Delmas with a smile. Yes. Actually, the reason why we are here is to tell you that we have some family matters to attend to. And it would require Aelita missing some school, said Q. Well, I believe that could be arranged. One of her friends could get any assignments she missed. Might I ask if you know how long she will be out? Asked Delmas. We'll be gone for about 5 days to a week. It won't be any longer than that, said Naruto. Well then, you'll be leaving when? Asked Delmas. Immediately. We're here to pick her up if that's all right, replied Naruto. Yes, of course. I have her schedule right here, I can take you to her class, said Delmas, standing. Well then, lead the way, said Naruto, who followed Delmas out the door. I can't believe he's buying this, said Naruto to Q, using the telepathic link they both shared. They had only been up and about for a short while, Naruto only being out of his coma for a week, but while out, Naruto and Q had found a great many things. One of which was the telepathic link. Since Q was once sealed in Naruto and often would leave the real world for Naruto's mind, they had formed a bond far greater than most mates. Naruto had also found out shortly afterward that he created a telepathic link every time he entered another's mind. He was surprisingly able to hear Jeremy's thoughts for about 3 days after he had originally went into the boy's mind, but only when they were within around 10 feet of each other. It didn't last any more than the 3 days. He could also hear the thoughts of the others as he had pulled them inside his mind, but he found a way to block them out. Well, you're a ninja, deception is your job. The kids did a nice job creating fake documents for us, replied Q. Yeah, but answering to Mr. Stones is going to take some getting used to, said Naruto. Mr. Stones. What? Asked Naruto, hearing Delmas speak. I asked if you were moving here from Canada. I just need to know, because if you are moving close to the school, Aelita could begin staying with you and free up a room. This may be a boarding school, but if you live close enough, there is no reason Aelita can't move in with you, the man replied. No, we won't be here long, replied Q. Like we said, we're just here on family business and to visit with Aelita. Well then, here we are, said Delmas, entering the classroom, before returning a moment later, Aelita in tow. Aelita for her part looked pleased to see them, hugging them as if she hadn't seen them in forever. However, using the telepathic link that had somehow stayed with her, she thought, did we know you were coming here? It's great to see both of you, she said aloud. Well, I'll leave you to collect whatever she might need from her room. Just tell your friends to collect any assignments you might miss, said Delmas, walking away. Assignments I might miss, what are you talking about? Asked Aelita. We have some family things to take care of, said Naruto, stressing the word family, and Aelita immediately knew what he was talking about. She had woken up that morning to find that her hands had become claw-like. She had to clip her fingernails and wear gloves with her outfit to hide them. All right, let's go get my things, she said, leading the way to her room. I'm real. Why glad you guys are here, she said over the mental link. When I saw my claws, I nearly had a heart attack. Do the others know? Asked Q. I haven't told them, but I think Jeremy might know, because of my gloves, replied Aelita. How goes the search for the antivirus? Once Naruto, and subsequently Q, learned from Jeremy's mind how to operate the supercomputer, one or both were working non-stop to see what they could do. Jeremy had wanted to supervise, but the group agreed that he didn't need any more sleepless nights than was necessary. Nothing. For now, you're still stuck, Naruto replied as they entered Aelita's room. After packing up her things, they then proceeded to Jeremy's room to wait for the young brainiac, who arrived shortly. So, I was right, he said. Your transformation started this morning. Yeah, we're heading to the factory right now. That reminds me, I'll need my assignments collected while I'm gone, said Aelita. Will do. I'll come and see you later tonight, replied Jeremy. Getting a head shake from Naruto and Q. You all need to stay away from the factory until about a day after she fully transforms, he said. What, why? Asked Jeremy. Naruto leaned down and whispered something into the boy's ear, making his eyes go wide and causing him to blush furiously. What is it? Why did they have to stay away? Asked Aelita. Oh, I think you'll find out, replied Q. Don't worry. If there is a Xana attack, I'm sure Naruto can get Aelita safely to the tower. Right. As long as he decides to stay away from the mega tanks. We don't want a repeat of yesterday's little incident, replied Jeremy, causing Naruto to sigh in embarrassment. Look, I didn't know that they had the firepower to devirtualize me even with my regeneration, said Naruto in his defense. When the tank had opened and began charging, everyone but Naruto had run for cover. Our favorite blonde however ran straight for it, and wound up taking a direct hit from its cannon, devirtualizing him. Much to his embarrassment. Well, we shouldn't waste any more time, let's go, said Aelita from the hallway. She's right, we don't know how soon the rest of her transformation will occur. We should HEA. Naruto was cut off when he reached the door and a purple field of energy stopped him from exiting, sent a powerful electric current through his body, and blasted him back onto Jeremy's bed. It was at this point Jeremy's computer started beeping. Looks like Xana's activated a tower, said the blonde genius. Imagine that, replied Q, attempting to revive Naruto as the shock had rendered him unconscious. Aelita, contact the others, and get to the factory. It looks like we're stuck here, said Naruto, coming to. Right, she replied, before running off. Well, we're stuck. Anyone up for a game of 20 questions? Asked Naruto, before Q slapped him in the back of the head, rendering him unconscious again. Any thoughts, Jeremy? She asked, watching him work furiously on his computer. I'm trying to link my computer to the supercomputer so I can maybe help from here, but Xana's blocked access. Maybe if I reboot, and set up a firewall, he trailed off. Well, try it. Not much else we can do in here anyway. How are they supposed to get on Lyoko without someone running the scanners? She asked. Aelita can get them on and then run a time delay program to have. The scanners send her to Lyoko remotely, replied Jeremy, shutting his computer down before going so far as to unhook everything before rehooking every wire. He then restarted his computer, and began working furiously. Aelita ran as quickly as she could. She got to the cafeteria to find Odd, Ulrich, and Yumi all eating lunch. Guys, Xana's activated a tower, we have to get to Lyoko right away, she said. The others just looking at her and nodding before getting up and running with her. Sure thing, princess, said Odd. Hey, where's Jeremy? Don't tell me Einstein's already at the factory. No, replied Aelita. He, Naruto, and Q are all trapped in his room by Xana. Apparently, Xana doesn't want his interference. We're on our own this time. Well, then we'd better do this fast, said ULR. As he removed the manhole cover that led to the sewers where their skateboards and scooters. Once they arrived at the factory, Aelita took control in the lab, sending the others down to the scanners. Let's do this, princess, said Odd. As the scanner closed, the same happening for Ulrich and Yumi. Aelita worked the controls. Transfer Odd, transfer Yumi, transfer Ulrich. Scanner Odd, scanner Yumi, scanner Ulrich, virtualization. With that, the three in the scanners felt a rushing sensation, before finding themselves hovering in the air over the forest sector. All right, Aelita, we're here. Set up the process and come on over, said Yumi. Hold on, replied Aelita, I'm bringing up the vehicles. Not a second later, the overbike, overwing and overboard virtualized in front of the gang. Thanks Aelita. Come on. We're waiting for you here, said Ulrich. Right, came her reply before she activated the process and went down to the scanners. Back on Lyoko, the gang watched Aelita appear in the air above them. Before dropping to the ground. Before she could hit, however, Yumi flew in on the overwing and caught her. Guys, the tower is north-northwest of us, she said. I can see it, said Odd. I just wish I didn't see what's around it. Around the tower were 2 crabs, 3 tarantulas, and several hornets. I think Xana really wants to get his hands on Aelita's memory, said Odd, to which the others nodded. God, this sucks, said Naruto. Complaining won't do any good, replied Q. Yeah, all we can go is hope that they'll be alright, replied Jeremy, who was still trying to interface with the supercomputer. We can't just sit here and wait. Xana trapped us for a reason. He's probably got enough monsters on Lyoko to take out Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi 3 times over. God, I hate this. Naruto took out a kunai from a pouch on his belt, before throwing it at the door. However, it didn't contact the force field, but instead passed right through. What the, said Naruto, walking up to the door and sticking his hand out. He once more received a shock and couldn't break through the force field. Quickly getting a piece of paper, Naruto quickly made a paper airplane before throwing it out the door. Once again, the object wasn't affected by the field. It looks like the field only stops living tissue from passing through, said Jeremy, looking up from his computer screen and flicking a pen through. That's it, shouted Naruto. Q can get out. What do you mean I can get out? She asked, slightly confused. Because of the seal, your original body was destroyed upon being sealed, correct? Naruto asked. Yes, but I don't see how that has to do with anything, she replied. Your Yuki only simulates flesh. If you turn into Yuki, said Naruto. I should be able to slip past the field, finished Q. Let's try it, she said before her body became nothing more than a red mist which flowed closer and closer to the door, before passing through. Once through, she once more became solid. Okay, now you need to get to the factory and help them, said Jeremy. I'll give you instructions on how to get on Lyoko without having someone manually operate the scanners. He wrote something down, before sending it through the field. Q took it before nodding and disappearing. Back on Lyoko, the gang wasn't doing so well. They couldn't get past the monsters without putting themselves out in the open and more than likely taking a hit and being devirtualized. We're going to have to make a rush for the tower. Ulrich and I will handle Xana's monsters. Odd, you go with Aelita and give her some cover, said Yumi. Right, said Odd, preparing his laser arrows. Aelita moved from the overwing onto Odd's overboard, grabbing onto her cat-themed friend. Let's go, shouted Ulrich, before he and Yumi engaged the monsters. Yumi used the overwing to fly around the tower, taking out several of the hornets, the rest giving chase. Ulrich used the overbike to zip between monsters, drawing their fire. Come on Aelita, let's go, said Odd, before attempting to use the opening created by their friends. However, it wasn't much of an opening. While the crabs kept after Ulrich, the tarantulas opened fire at the overboard. Attempting to devirtualize it, Odd tried to avoid their fire, but took a hit, causing him to momentarily lose control. Once regained, he took aim and fired a laser arrow. Directly into the eye marking on the tarantula, effectively destroying it. The other tarantula used the momentary lapse in concentration and fired a shot at the overboard, devirtualizing it, and causing Odd and Aelita to fall. The tarantulas began coming closer, when Aelita dropped to her knees and put her hands together as if in prayer. As if by magic, a 3-foot-thick dome appeared around her and Odd, effectively blocking out anything that would try to get in. But it wouldn't last long under the hail of fire from the tarantula. Nice work Aelita, said Odd, giving her a thumbs up. Maybe, she replied, but it's times like this I wish I had powers that could actually fight monsters like you all do. The wall's about to crack, noted Odd, readying his laser arrows for when it did. The W. All suddenly fell apart and the tarantula began to move forward again. Laser arrow, shouted Odd, before firing a barrage of his weapons, but none could hit their mark. Before he could try something else. The tarantula used a rapid-fire barrage, hitting him but not devirtualizing him. He looked up to see the tarantula's laser arms trained on him. The Scyphozoa already had Aelita in its tentacles. Odd closed his eyes, waiting for the blast that would devirtualize him, but it didn't come. Cracking open his eyes, he saw the tarantula backing away, a glowing slash mark across the eye symbol. It shrieked before being destroyed. There was a flash of light and Aelita was on the ground, the Scyphozoa's tentacles severed. Looks like I got here just in time. Odd and the newly conscious Aelita turned to see Q. She wore what looked like some sort of silver armor, clawed gauntlets at the end of each arm. There was a mask that covered the lower part of her face, and her hair was tied into a ponytail. Her 9 tails swayed behind her, and in her hand was what looked to be some sort of whip, utilizing the same blue fire that made up Naruto's attacks. She looked to be from the waist down wearing black, skin-tight pants with ninja sandals on her feet. "You're telling me," said Odd. "Come on kiddo, you've got places to be," said Q, running for the tower. "You heard the lady," said Aelita, running after Q. Odd bringing up the rear. When the crabs realized what was going on, they stopped their pursuit of Ulrich in favor of stopping Q, but she jumped in the air and slashed one across the eye with her foxfire whip. When she landed, she wrapped the whip around the leg of the crab, ripping it off when she pulled, before hitting the eye symbol on that one as well. "Wait a minute, wasn't there 3 tarantulas?" asked Aelita. The group looked around, before Q was blasted in the back by the remaining tarantula, which had hid behind the tower. "Laser arrow," shouted Odd, sending an arrow directly at the tarantula. Hitting dead on the mark, destroying it. Aelita ran into the tower, entering the familiar interior. She stepped onto the platform, the rings on the symbol lighting up as she stepped on them. She became surrounded by a glowing white aura and she floated up, doing a little flip, before landing on the upper platform. Holding out her hand, a touch screen appeared, taking her handprint. Her name flashing on the screen as it recognized her. She entered the Lyoko code on the interface and uttered a small, "Tower deactivated," as the data was cleared from the tower. "Jeremy, look," said Naruto, pointing toward the door. It began sparking with electricity, before it just stopped. Naruto and Jeremy looked at each other before cautiously walking up to the door, before passing through. "Good," said Jeremy. "Let's get to the factory. They're going to have a hard time getting off Lyoko with nobody working the controls." Time skip. Normally, since there was really no damage done, I wouldn't bother with a return trip, but I think given the circumstances, it's needed, said Jeremy to the group. "Go for it Einstein," said Odd, before Jeremy began punching in a series of commands. "Return to the past now," he said, hitting the enter key, before they were all engulfed in a white light. "So, you're Aelita's parents. I must say it's an honor to meet you both," said Principal Delmas, shaking Naruto's hand. "It's an honor to meet you as well, Mr. Delmas. As you know, we're here to see you about our daughter Aelita," said Naruto. "Ah, yes, Aelita is one of our brightest students. You should be very proud of your girl," replied Delmas with a smile. "Yes. Actually, the reason why we are here is to tell you that we have some family matters to attend to, and it old require Aelita missing some school," said Q. "Well, I believe that could be arranged. One of her friends could get any assignments she missed. Might I ask if you know how long she will be out?" asked Delmas. "We'll be gone for about 5 days to a week. It won't be any longer than that," said Naruto. "Well then, you'll be leaving when?" asked Delmas. "Immediately. We're here to pick her up if that's all right," replied Naruto. "Yes, of course. I have her schedule right here, I can take you to her class," said Delmas, standing. "Well then, lead the way," said Naruto, who followed Delmas out the door. "So, are you moving here from Canada? I just need to know, because if you are moving close to the school, Aelita could begin staying with you and free up a room. This may be a boarding school, but if you live close enough. There is no reason Aelita can't move in with you," the man asked. "No, we won't be here long," replied Q. "Like we said, we're just here on family business and to visit with Aelita." "Well then, here we are," said Delmas, entering the classroom, before returning a moment later, Aelita in tow. The girl ran up and hugged both of them. "It's great to see both of you," she said. "Well, I'll leave you to collect whatever she might need from her room." Just tell your friends to collect any assignments you might miss, said Delmas before walking away. They then proceeded to retrieve anything they needed from Aelita's room before this time heading directly to the factory, passing the cafeteria where the others were. There they go, remarked Ulrich. Yeah, later we'll have to go see what they're up to, said Odd. Not an option. Trust me, you do not want to go to the factory, replied Jeremy. Why's that, Jeremy? Asked Yumi. Well, stuttered the blonde, beginning to blush. Come on, spill. What's going on? Asked Odd. Well, according to Naruto, they plan on forcing her transformation, but according to him, the influx of hormones would make Aelita a little more instinctual, said Jeremy. Could you please speak in a language I understand, please? Asked Odd. Basically, until the hormones back off in a day or so, Aelita will, well, she'd pretty much rape us, said Jeremy, blushing. The others couldn't help but stare at the retreating form of their friend, mouths agape. I'm telling you, Odd, we have to wait for Naruto to contact us, said Jeremy. The yell. Ao and purple-haired boy had been complaining of boredom and was just downright curious to see what was happening with Naruto, Q and Aelita. It had already been 5 days and they had yet to even hear of a Xana attack. We don't know what's going on with them yet, and after what Naruto said. Oh please Einstein, don't tell me you haven't been at all curious about what they're doing. Plus, it's not like you wouldn't mind Aelita being all over you, replied Odd, laughing at the blush covering his friend's face. I have no idea what you mean, said Jeremy, looking away. Well, you're not alone, not many people do. The two boys looked over to see Yumi walking up to the lunch table, Ulrich a few paces behind. What were you guys talking about? Odd is being impatient about going to the factory, said Jeremy. Glad to change the subject, if only by a little. Well, can't say I'm not. I really want to see Aelita. Wonder what she looks like as a kitsune, said Ulrich. As Yumi, Odd and Ulrich continued their conversation, Jeremy heard his cell phone ring. Answering, he plugged his other ear so he could hear over the noise of the cafeteria. All I'm saying is that she probably looks so cool. I mean, look at Naruto and Q. And then imagine Aelita with the same features, said Odd. Well, you've got your chance to see her, said Jeremy. That was Naruto. He said things have calmed down. Over there and we should come over when we can. Awesome, said Yumi. We can go over after lunch. Then it's settled, said Jeremy. So, different topic, said Odd. Do you think we can convince Naruto to teach us how to be ninja? His three friends looked at him like he was a whack job. What? All I'm saying is that it could come in handy. Alright Odd, just how would ninja skills come in handy in normal life? Asked Jeremy. Not normal life, replied Odd. Our lives. It would be easier to sneak to the factory, and with Xana beginning to possess people, it'd be nice if we could defend ourselves. I hate to say it. But Odd has a point, said Ulrich. If we were trained, we would be able to handle whatever Xana throws at us in the real world. Yeah, said Odd. Not to mention, we could show off in gym class. Of course you'd have an ulterior motive, said Jeremy, sighing as Odd merely laughed. Naruto turned around at the sound of the elevator opening, revealing the Lyoko gang, sans Aelita. Hey guys, said Naruto. Smiling and giving a half wave. So, Naruto, you have much trouble here? Asked Jeremy. Well, not in a normal sense, but I'm still stumped on the search for Aelita's antivirus, replied Naruto. Bringing up some charts and information on the monitors of the supercomputer. But I'm working on it. So, where's Aelita? Asked Yumi. Right behind you. Turning around, the group saw nothing. Until they looked up and saw Aelita on the scaffolding high above them. Taking a hold of the rail, the pink-haired girl flipped up onto it, before back-flipping off, much to the horror of her onlooking friends. As she flipped in the air, she hit the wall and used it as a rebound point and launched herself off to land in a crouched position on all fours before her friends. She then stood up, allowing them to see the transformation. The girl now sported two tails that matched her father's exactly. Instead of her normal ears there was a pair of fox ears on top of her head. Not quite the length of Naruto's but similar. Her pupils were also slitted, though her eyes stayed the same color. Hi guys, she said, partially giggling. Aelita, said Jeremy. In the flesh, replied Aelita, twirling around so they could see her all around. Wow, said Odd. You look awesome. Thanks, she said, wrapping her tails around herself. Her ears perked up at the statement also. It took a day or two. But she seems like she's nearly back to normal, so she'll be coming back to school for the second half of the day, said Naruto. Cool, said Jeremy. Where's Q? She'll be gone for a little while. She's on a special mission, replied Naruto. Special mission? Asked Yumi. Mom's investigating a possible lead on the whereabouts of my real mom, said Aelita. Whoa, really? Asked Ulrich. Yeah, we think she's being held in a military prison just on the border between France and Germany. Q's checking it out, said Naruto. Anyway, we should head back to the school. Get Aelita settled in again. Alright, let's head out, said Naruto, shifting into his adult human form, Aelita shifting into her old form. The group entered the elevator and exited the factory. While Odd, Jeremy, Yumi, and Ulrich took their particular modes of transportation, Naruto and Aelita both opted to run, and easily stayed up with the group. What shocked all but Aelita, though they had seen it before, was the fact Naruto was running on the water. It was something they could never really get used to. Neither Naruto nor Aelita had to climb the ladder out of the sewers either, instead they simply jumped to launch themselves out, both easily landing on their feet. They entered the campus, and Naruto and Aelita first went straight to Delmaz's office. Once Aelita was once again noted as being at school, Naruto went back to the factory to continue work on the antivirus while Aelita went to class. As she waved goodbye to him, he turned around, and as he did so, Aelita's eyes flashed red for a moment. In a flash she was back to normal and turned to find out the current location of her friends, Jeremy in particular. She rejoined the group, each of whom was headed for their respective classes. Aelita sighed. It was going to be a long rest of the day. Throughout class, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that someone was staring at him. Every time he would look around, not only did he not find anyone, but it just drew the attention of the teacher. Jeremy, are you all right? He asked. Huh? Oh, yes sir, I'm fine, he said. Well, if you say so, replied the teacher, before starting back up on his lecture. However, it wasn't very long before the feeling returned and Jeremy turned to see if someone was really watching him. He thought he may just have been paranoid, but he felt the feeling again and he turned so hard however that he ended up falling out of his chair. Mr. Belpoy, I believe that maybe you should go to the infirmary, said the teacher. No, I'm fine, really, said Jeremy, pushing himself off the floor. No, if you're not feeling well I would rather have you go to the infirmary, replied the teacher, adamant in his decision. I can escort him to the infirmary, said Aelita, raising her hand. Thank you Miss Stones, said the teacher, getting back to his lecture as Aelita nearly dragged Jeremy out of the classroom. I'm telling you I'm fine, said Jeremy, NNING to keep up with the girl holding his hand and running down the hall. Yeah I know, giggled Aelita. Aelita, said Jeremy, noticing finally that they weren't heading in a direction remotely near the infirmary. Yes, said Aelita, not even looking at the boy. The infirmary is that way, he said. Yeah I know, she said, as though it were obvious. We're going to my room. We? Asked Jeremy. Aelita turned around and Jeremy saw that her eyes had become red, and she was smiling. Oh, I think you know, she said seductively, licking her lips slightly. Jeremy's eyes widened, and he wrenched his hand out of her grasp. Ooh, looks like I've got a fighter. Tell you what, I'm in a good mood, said Aelita, raising her voice as Jeremy ran away from her down the hall. I'll give you a 5-minute head start, she shouted. As Jeremy ran, he reached into his pocket, only to find his phone missing. It must have fallen out of his pocket when he fell from his chair. He wouldn't doubt he missed it and would have gotten it had he not been whisked from the room so quickly. He needed to contact Naruto, and fast. He changed course quickly and began heading off the campus. Aelita just stood, arms over her head, leaning against the wall, counting down the time of the head start she gave to Jeremy. Aelita. She turned to find Odd and Yumi walking toward her. What's up? Oh, nothing, replied the pink-haired girl casually. Have you seen Jeremy? I haven't seen him, said Yumi. Oh, he probably went to the factory. Something was bugging him during class, and then he just took off, replied Aelita. Maybe I should call him, just in case, said Odd, dialing Jeremy's number on his phone. However, both he and Yumi were puzzled when Jeremy's phone went off, and it was coming from Aelita's pocket. "Why do you have Jeremy's cell phone?" asked Yumi. Before she could react, Aelita grabbed her and looked her in the eye. Her eyes flashed red for a moment before Yumi fell limp, completely unconscious. Odd yelled and tried to run, but when he turned, Aelita used extreme speed to block his path, before looking him in the eye as well, knocking him out. As he fell to the ground, Aelita looked to make sure that nobody had seen or was coming, before opening her door and dragging the two into her room, dropping them in a heap on her floor. Leaving, she closed the door behind her, before sniffing the air. Picking up Jeremy's scent. Finding it, she followed her nose, casually walking down the hall. Hefting the cover off the manhole that lead to the sewer tunnels, Jeremy began climbing down the ladder. If he could just make it to the factory, Naruto could help him. He descended the ladder, grabbed his scooter and took off. As he went, he began to calm down a bit. He was going to be fine. He was already halfway to the factory, and was crossing the distance fast. The trip didn't take long and he soon was climbing out of the sewer onto the bridge to the factory. Unfortunately, as he grabbed the rope to swing down, he himself was grabbed from behind and yanked outside. Looking down, he saw a tail wrapped around his body, which turned him around, revealing a smiling Aelita. "Oh, we don't need to bother dear old dad," she said. "Let's just go someplace a little more private." Gripping him even tighter, she crouched before leaping high up into the air, hitting the side of the building. Before she could fall, she got as good a grip as she could before leaping off the wall and jumping all the way to the roof, where she released Jeremy, who fell to the roof and rolled. The boy genius leapt to his feet, but was tripped up by a tail around his leg, tripping him up. "Now Jeremy," said Aelita, in a mock scolding tone, "I gave you your head start, now you have to play by my rules." That said, she lifted him by his ankles and trapped him in an upside-down kiss. When it ended, the boy was stunned, too much so to even speak, let alone move. "That's better," she said, dropping him on the rooftop before she lay down next to him, snuggling up to his chest. "Now maybe we can get on to more pressing matters." As she said that, she trailed her finger in a circle around his chest. Before her hand began moving decidedly lower, making Jeremy jump. "Aelita, stop it, really, you know neither you nor me want to do this," said Jeremy, beginning to crawl away, only or Aelita to flip on top of him and use her tails to pin both arms down, rendering him immobile. "Well, I want it, and it's happening either way," she said. "I don't know why you're fighting it." Every logical piece of Jeremy's mind was screaming at how wrong this was, but unfortunately his body seemed to be ignoring it, as evidenced by the sudden tight feeling of his pants. Aelita, who was sitting on him, could also apparently feel the change and got a pleased look on her face. "Well, it looks like you were wrong on both counts, Jeremy," she said. "Now maybe we can." She was cut off suddenly. For some reason, she couldn't move. "Man, am I glad to see you," said Jeremy, and Aelita could hear Naruto behind her. "Well, I'm glad I got here when I did." Aelita tried to move and ended up tipping herself over. She was frozen like a statue. What did you do to me?" she growled out, trying desperately to get up and get away. Temporary paralysis technique. "Can't have you trying to forcibly have sex with your friends. Can we, young lady?" said Naruto. All he got in response was a disgruntled grunt. "How do you know we were here?" asked Jeremy, standing up. "Well, Ulrich found Odd and Yumi knocked out in Aelita's room. He woke them up and they told him what happened, then they called me. I headed out to try and head you off, but I picked up your scents and found you in this position," replied Naruto. Grabbing hold of the both of them, they found themselves down by the elevator. Getting in, Naruto and Aelita went down to the scanners while Jeremy operated them. Putting Aelita in the scanner. Before getting in one himself. "All right, I don't know what we're doing with this, but I'll just play along," said Jeremy. "Oh, just run the program," said Naruto. Okay, geez. Transfer. Naruto, transfer Aelita, scanner Naruto, scanner Aelita, virtualization, said Jeremy, and Naruto and Aelita both felt the rush before finding themselves dropping down into the ice sector of Lyoko. "Okay, why are we here?" asked Aelita, finally able to move. Her form on Lyoko hadn't changed except for the fact that she now had her new fox features. Well, the way I see it, we both have some punishment coming. You, for lying to me and trying to rape Jeremy, and me for falling for your lie, said Naruto. So, for a punishment, we are going to spar until I'm devirtualized, or Zena activates a tower. ND given the fact we can regenerate hit points, that is going to take a long time. Aelita gulped and took a step back. Come on, said Naruto, holding his arm out in an open fighting stance. He flipped his hand in the universal sign for, bring it on. Aelita ran in and threw a punch. Naruto dodged, before darting his hand in and grabbing her wrist, flipping her around and over his head. She flipped down and landed on her ass, sliding a bit on the icy ground of the sector. Is that all you've got? Asked Naruto. Aelita, in her hormonally imbalanced state, just growled and jumped up on all fours. She lashed out with her tails for a strike, but as Naruto parried, she sent a kick to his kneecap. Hey Jeremy. The young genius turned to see Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi coming out of the elevator. Good to see you not being raped by Aelita, said Ulrich. Well, it came pretty close, but you got your call into Naruto just in time, said Jeremy. Where is Naruto? Asked Yumi. He and Aelita are on Lyoko, sparring. I don't know what good that'll do, but how would Odd put it, said Jeremy. Kicking her rear, knocking her socks off, taking her to Pound Town, asked Odd. All of the above, said Jeremy. She gained an upper hand a while ago, but she's back on the defensive right now, he said, bringing up a visual. As the fight played out, all four would make faces of pain for their friend. All of the above indeed. Aelita stood panting, out of breath. She threw everything she had at Naruto, but he just returned the favor on her, without breaking a sweat. Even on Lyoko, she didn't have any upper hand. Why can't I hit you? She shouted in frustration between punches and kicks. Aside from the shot to the kneecaps, she hadn't managed to land so much as a finger on her father. Well, you lack training. Something that won't be a problem for much longer, replied Naruto, easily avoiding all of Aelita's attacks, catching her final punch and twisting her around, twisting her arm behind her back and locking it up. You also lack your common sense right now. What are you talking about? Screamed Aelita. You think you're in control of yourself, but every decision you have been making has been based on the rush of hormones through your body. You have to learn to control them, not let them control you, said Naruto, throwing Aelita, making the girl trip and fall, sliding on the ice. As the girl pushed herself up, Naruto kicked her in the stomach, making her double over. When she tried to push herself up, he merely stepped his foot down on her back, pinning her to the ground. Why are you doing this? Asked Aelita. So you can learn two things. If you don't take control for yourself, then anyone else can take control of you, and that will lead to disaster. And the other thing is patience. You can't just blindly run into something. You have to think it through clearly and rationally. Something that during this time you seem to be having an exceedingly hard time doing, said Naruto harshly. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself, she cried out from beneath Naruto's foot. Bullcrap Aelita, said Naruto, lifting his foot off her and holding out his hand, which she took. He helped her up and looked her directly in the eyes. I know you have the willpower to fight those particular urges. You're my daughter after all. Not to spoil your father-daughter moment. Naruto and Aelita stopped upon hearing Jeremy's voice. But Xana's just activated a tower. And you've got monsters heading your way. Where's the tower? We'll take care of it, said Naruto. It's in your sector. But it'll take you a while to get there, even with the vehicles, said Jeremy. Well, bring one up and monitor for any Xana attacks on the real world. Aelita and Naruto stopped talking at a sound coming from behind him. It sounded familiar. His eyes widened in recognition and he grabbed Aelita with his tails and flung her aside while he ducked in the other direction. Aelita, who cool. D now see what was behind. Naruto watched as the megatank fired its powerful laser wall beam in their direction. She got out of the way just in time. Naruto got away from the blast too, but it wasn't as clean of a getaway as Aelita. His tail's getting blasted and causing him to be blown back, spinning all the while. The blast was so powerful that it brought him to the edge of the virtual ice they Rion and sent him into a free fall toward the digital sea. Dad! Shouted Aelita. Her worries were alleviated when her father reappeared, his wings now out and spread wide. "Don't worry, I'm fine," said Naruto. Using a foxfire arrow, he launched a bolt of fire through the air down to the megatank. However, the monster closed its shell in order to protect itself. The force of the attack, however, was enough to knock it back and make it lose control on the ice, making it skid right off the edge of the cliff. The megatank, however, he continued, landing next to Aelita. They saw when it hit the digital sea, as a bright light shot into the sky. "Yes, but knowing Xana, more are already on the way," said Aelita. "Jeremy, how about those vehicles?" "Coming up," said Jeremy, loading the programs for the overboard and the overwing. Naruto hopped on the overboard and Aelita took the overwing. "I'm sending Odd, Yumi, and Ulrich to Lyoko as backup. You never know what Xana may try to pull. The tower is halfway across the sector. Southeast of your position," continued Jeremy, sending Odd, Ulrich and Yumi to the scanners. "On our way," said Naruto, he and Aelita taking off. "All right Jeremy, start it up," said Yumi, getting into one of the open scanners. "Right," replied the genius, running the program. The scanners, the three, were enclosed shut with a hiss. "Transfer Odd, transfer Yumi, transfer Ulrich," he continued as their Lyoko ID cards were pulled from the selection. "Scanner Odd, scanner Yumi, scanner Ulrich," he went through the final processes before hitting the enter key. Virtualization. The three in the scanners felt the familiar rushing sensation before they found themselves hovering in the air above the ice sector. Dropping to the ground, they stood up and looked around. "There's the activated tower," said Ulrich, pointing with his sword in the direction of the red-colored structure. "Okay, wait for Naruto and Aelita. It may take a bit." "Just hold your positions," replied Jeremy. However, not a moment after he told them, the screen showed several of Xana's monsters coming as a welcoming committee. "Okay, change of plans guys," he said. "Xana is sending some monsters to try and head you off. Instead of just sitting around, try to destroy as many monsters as you can to allow Aelita to get to the tower when she gets there." "Right, you heard Einstein guys," said Odd. "Let's clear the road." From behind a large outcropping of ice, they saw a swarm of 5 hornets fly out and head straight for them. From behind the same chunk of ice, 2 tarantulas emerged as well as a crab. All 3 of which began firing en masse with the hornets. Quickly breaking out their weapons, Ulrich blocked most of the shots with his sword while Yumi seemed to be holding her own using her fans to block. Odd however merely had his shield as protection, but it seemed to be serving him well. Both Ulrich and Yumi moved behind him and Yumi took the advantage of the shelter to launch her fans. One of which managed to take out 2 hornets, while the other managed to hit the crab, destroying it. The remaining hornets however flew behind the 3 and began attacking from the rear, forcing them to disband. "Super sprint," said Ulrich, rushing at high speeds toward the tarantulas. As he rushed he also had the added trouble of dodging the barrage of laser fire. "Triplicate," he shouted, Octiva. Ting his Lyoko power and splitting into 3 Ulrichs instead of the 1. As he got closer, one of his copies was taken out, but the ability had bought him enough time and 1 Ulrich jumped into the IR above the first and slashed the I mark, destroying it while the second dropped to the ground and slid beneath the second tarantula. As he was going under, the monster looked down to see him and had mistake allowed Ulrich to slash the eye of Xana on it while going under, destroying that tarantula as well. As he and his copy high-fived, they were both hit by laser fire from 3 more hornets which had shown up. The copy was destroyed, while the original was knocked over, before being hit again, causing him to be devirtualized. In the real world, Ulrich emerged from a scanner, slamming his fist into the wall in anger. On Lyoko, Yumi backflipped to avoid the hail of fire from the hornets. Stopping, she flipped and spun, throwing one of her fans, taking out a hornet, but another managed to hit her in the arm with a blast. It stung for a moment, but it didn't stop her. Catching her fan as it came back, she went on the defensive, blocking as best she could. Climbing out from his hiding place behind an outcropping, Odd jumped high in the air and took careful aim, before firing a laser arrow. The fates seemed to be favoring him, as the hornets had taken formation to attack Yumi, and his laser arrow went fly past them all. But was close enough to them that it managed to slash each of the 5 Xana eyes. This appeared to be more than enough to destroy the monsters. Jeremy, How close are Naruto and Aelita? Asked Yumi. Is this close enough? Shouted Naruto. Turning around, Odd and Yumi saw the two fly in on their respective vehicles. Naruto flew down and jumped off the overboard, switching places with Odd flawlessly as the boy jumped up and landed on the vehicle. Flying up and flipping over, he flew back down again and came to a stop next to Yumi. Aelita descended next to Yumi as well, and the Japanese girl took Aelita's place at the overwings controls while Aelita grabbed onto her. Jeremy, what's going on out there? Asked Naruto. I don't know. I've been monitoring any news or alerts being put out, but I don't know what Xana's planning yet. I just sent Ulrich to see what's going on, replied Jeremy. Okay, keep us posted. We'll get Aelita to the tower, said Naruto, activating his wings in order to be able to travel with the other flyers. Back in the real world, Jeremy received a phone call from Ulrich. He answered it and the boy on the other end sounded half frantic. Jeremy, we've got trouble, he shouted. What's going on? According to my sweeps it should be dead silent up there, replied Jeremy. That's just it. Everyone's out cold. They're all unconscious. And to make matters worse, the school caught fire, said Ulrich. What? Said Jeremy, dumbfounded. Yeah, replied Ulrich, looking on at the disaster. It looks just like how I found Odd and Yumi. It looks like a fire started before they all fell asleep. Right now it's only in the science building, and it looks like everyone got out. The fire department got here, but they're unconscious too. I'm gonna try to evacuate the other buildings. Hopefully I can wake people up, but Xana really doesn't do anything halfway. Right. Yumi, Odd, Naruto and Aelita are almost to the tower, replied Jeremy. Okay. Deactivate the tower, and then launch a return to the past. I'm going to go get people out, said Ulrich, shutting his phone off and running into the dorm building. What he didn't see was a strange black mist that was following him. Guys, said Jeremy, you have to hurry up. Xana's put everyone asleep at school and has started a fire. Deactivate the tower quick. Ulrich said it's only in the science building right now, but it's gonna spread fast. Right, said Yumi. Come on Cinderella, said Odd, flying next to Yumi and Aelita. Midnight's coming up fast. Aelita nodded and he group picked up speed as they flew toward the tower. As they neared the tower, two megatanks rolled out from behind it. We've got company, said Aelita. I'm on it, said Naruto, soaring down toward the two metal balls. The man never learns, said Odd, flying straight up before flying back down to join Naruto. The megatank opened and began charging. Odd fired a laser arrow barrage, managing to destroy the first. The second one fired off its laser, which Naruto held back with his light bow. He seemed to be struggling with it, but managed to hold it off long enough for Yumi and Aelita to get past. Fortunately they did get through right before his bow shattered, causing him to be blasted. Unlike the others who would be devirtualized on contact, Naruto had the painful experience of being hit with the beam and was under constant fire for a full 5 seconds before being devirtualized. Back in the real world, Naruto stepped out of the scanner. Naruto, said Jeremy, as long as you're out here, you should go help Ulrich at the school. Right, said Naruto, groaning a bit before using the shunshin. Ulrich dragged Jim out of the building but wasn't putting a dent in the people still sleeping inside. And the fire was beginning to spread fast with the wind beginning to pick up. Sighing, he ran back in. Searching the rooms, he found the one thing he was hoping to avoid. Sissy, the principal's daughter. She was fast asleep in her room. Hearing an explosion, he turned to see the fire spreading down the hall. Another explosion rocked the building. Ulrich dived into the girl's room as the door blew shut. Trying to open the door, he found it was jammed shut. Turning toward the window, he didn't see the black mist flow beneath the door and fill up the room. Step by step he moved toward the window, but just kept getting tired. As his vision swam, he dropped to his knees. In less than a minute he was out like a light. Naruto arrived on the scene, finding it in shambles. Pulling out toward nature, he flashed through hand seals, before pulling any and all water near into a giant cloud above the school, causing a torrent of rain to fall, quickly putting out the fire. As he breathed a sigh of relief, Jeremy called. Yeah Jeremy, I'm getting the fire put out. I haven't seen Ulrich at all though, he said. Well, try to find him. He could be in serious trouble, said Jeremy. I'm on it, said Naruto, hanging up. But before he could take a step, he was surrounded by the black mist and out like a light. Back on Lyoko, Aelita just entered the tower. Once it was deactivated, Jeremy began the return trip. Return to the past, now, he said, before being engulfed by the white light. Before the light engulfed Naruto, he heard in the recesses of his mindscape a voice calling his name, a very familiar, angry voice. Odd. Ulrich, Yumi and Jeremy sat at the lunch table. So, do you think she'll go nuts this time? Asked Odd. I don't think so. If anything knocked any common sense into her. It was Naruto's sparring, said Yumi. No, I think she found the sense on her own this time. The group turned to see Naruto walking up, Aelita in tow. Hey princess, how are you feeling? Asked Ulrich. A lot better this time, she said, sitting down with her friends. And I'm sorry for what happened. It's no problem. You weren't yourself, said Jeremy. She should be fine now, but the is something I need to tell you guys, said Naruto. Huh, what's that? Asked Yumi. Yeah dad, what's up? Asked Aelita, clueless as well. I think Sasuke is still alive. They all widened their eyes. Sasuke, as in, that freak that almost killed you? Asked Ulrich. Yeah, and I think he's somehow connected to Zana, said Naruto, getting up. I'm going to try to find out how. The end. Thanks for watching, also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.